Just a slight tangent on that.
This is far too much of a tangent. Just a brief interruption.
Can I also say one more thing on this?
But we also need to impose some rules. Like, we can't just have 20-minute tangents over a text.
Come on, that's just refusal to consider the circumstances. We're not going to entertain that, Joe.
This conversation is not a good one, I think. Do we argue much?
No, we keep them inside.
Fester.
See, I thought this was a ridiculous text until I read the top three, and then I thought, do you know what? I'd actually debate that with you. It is an interesting... Sorry, it's not an interesting question, but...
Let's make that clear.
I love the sound of a snooker referee counting up the score.
Well, don't ask me how, but there's another edition of A Slight Tangent coming at you. You're very welcome. We have Arthur O'D to my left. Michael McCarthy is here as well. Will O'Callaghan to my right. This is the OTB PM team, the FM team, if you like. Raw and...
Other rejected names.
Coming at you. Opining on various stories of the week. That is the general plan here. This started during the summer when we had acres of time to discuss various things. There was no football show. Now there is a football show and a World Cup on, and somehow we're still here. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome. We reconvene once again.
By popular demand, I would say, Joe, I think there'd be a close to riot if we decided not to press on with a slight tangent at this point.
I'll get to the emails, and genuinely thank you for the emails.
They're wonderful.
Inundated, I would say. Amazing response by email. A slight tangent at offtheball.com is where you can get us. And this is the first time on A Slight Tangent where we're just going off the emails. Now, that is code for saying we had a meeting earlier on and none of us could come up with anything. And thankfully, when I checked the email account, there was loads there. So that's where we are.
Before you start, Joe, just one thing on last week. There was a comment on YouTube that said Arthur has a fancy tea bag, and I can't help but look to my left and say once again that Arthur has a fancy tea bag.
I got one off him just before the show.
It's a gimmick.
It's not part of his persona.
Yeah, no, we go long enough and might get them sent in to us.
Green tea.
Yeah. I won't name the brand. Just...
No, don't. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah.
Okay. Braeburn coffee, of course.
So is this a no coffee after 8 kind of idea, or...?
No.
I've had to put in a 5 o'clock rule. It's very tempting at 5 to 7 when you need a bit of oomph to have a coffee, but you pay for it. There was a text in. Mick and I were chatting on the news round just briefly to round off the last hour. I'm considering getting a console of some kind, Xbox or PlayStation. PlayStation's quite expensive.
They're neither cheap, but yeah, go on.
You can get an Xbox Series S thingy for 2 something, under 300. Although you have to pay a monthly subscription. I didn't come from that era.
You're going to have to get it in Sony as well. Either way. Well, that's if you want to play online. If you don't play your games yourself...
You can't buy a game for the S version. There's no place to put the disc. I was asking the guy in the shop and he looked at me
like... It's a digital-only one?
Yeah, he was looking at me like I was 90. I buy the box and put the game in. Speak up!
Where does the cartridge go?
Somebody texted. I have 2 kids under 10.
Have you got any joysticks?
Yeah, I wasn't far, I have 2 kids under 10. Wife works nights. I play old-fashioned FIFA, not online, he says in brackets here, on PlayStation, taking a lower league team up while I listen to OTB or podcasts. I don't watch TV, so it suits me. It's a mindless task that I find relaxing. Go for it, Joe, says the texter. That is the vibe that attracts me, I have to say. That get off your phone, don't be just flicking on TV channels. Get absorbed in something. That is the appeal of it.
Ultimately, he's not getting trolled by 9-year-old children on Fortnite or on FIFA who are going to annoy him. He can just play the computer, play at his own pace.
Would you not go and get a Football Manager?
No, that's too nerdy.
What?
Too nerdy.
Yeah.
Once you've committed to the bit here and you're going for computer games, you can't go, Football Manager's too nerdy.
I see myself playing a lot of Tiger Woods golf on it.
I got that.
Yeah.
It's funny this happened. I got gifted a PlayStation, it was like second-hand PlayStation, for my birthday in March. Yeah. Now I same as you, like I wouldn't have had one since I was a child, and don't play it an awful lot, but did get, is it Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy, whichever one the name was on it.
Woods.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
That's a great game, yeah.
It's amazing. And there's a new version of it out.
And it's just so enjoyable. I like the way you go through all the real stuff, going through whatever the equivalent of Q, the Corn Ferry, whatever that is. I've never heard of it before.
Corn Ferry Tour. Yeah.
But I think if there is I do think there's a relaxation element to it. That's what I used to do. So I would play online, but you're not talking to anyone or engaging with anyone. You're just playing in your division against whatever you qualify for. You're playing against people, and then sometimes you might do a career mode or whatever. But it was exactly what the texter was saying. I used to put on podcasts, which is funny enough, is like that is my favourite form of entertainment, right? But I don't listen to it in the house unless I'm like, doing the dishes or cleaning or something like that where I'm active. I can't sit down on a couch and listen to a podcast. I feel like I have to be watching something. So if I'm playing...
Marcus Rashford.
Oh, serious goal.
Good goal, yeah.
Free kick.
Free kick.
Marcus Rashford. Missed a chance first half. We are live.
Wales just need 5 now.
Shocked to hear. Wales 0, England 1.
That's been coming.
50 minutes in the clock. England electric this evening, Michael McCarthy.
Yeah, apparently according to a texter, not according to Liam Brady and Damien Duff on RTE, but they do tend to always think England are crap on RTE, don't they? Have you ever noticed that?
What's that? 10 past 8?
8 minutes in.
Not bad.
What?
The RTE corner with Michael.
What? Come on. I just said that like they have a fine tradition, and most of the time it's been some of the best television in history, where they always, at every tournament, think England are brutal.
Are you saying they've been unfairly critical this time round?
I don't know. They've been watching the match a lot more intently than I have. I've been at work. But from what I've seen, they've been playing well. I don't know if anybody else agrees or disagrees.
Friday night was pretty awful.
BBC
tonight.
panel were effusive at halftime, saying England were killing them. We're just seeing the Rashford goal. Really good free kick into the top right corner. Very good. Isn't it though, Michael?
Yes, Joseph.
Just at our age, increasingly, a massive waste of time and a bit grim to be sitting there playing computer games.
But again, if it's your relaxation time and you are doing what I was saying, which is maybe like listening to a podcast instead of watching a TV show, instead of watching The Crown on Netflix.
No, I hear you. And I watch The Crown. I watch a lot of television. There's basically nothing on Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime I haven't seen.
Okay.
But shouldn't we aspire to better habits and better things to do, like reading?
I think that can be a bit of a kind of a... I don't think you mean it as in a snobby way, but I feel that there's an element of like...
Sorry to interrupt you again. Phil Foden's just scored now.
What?
Yeah.
Where are you now, Duffer?
I told you
Brady.
England were doing well.
Take that, RTE. Mick McCarthy 2, Wales 0.
What kind of reading are we talking about here, Joe?
Do you know what, actually? I would
Golf
say
books.
any reading. Even just the act of reading is so good for your brain. Even a very maligned John Grisham airport thriller is better for your brain.
But what about like... See what? Yeah, for your brain. Okay, yeah, maybe. But what about like Sudoku or something?
Yeah, Sudoku.
You know what I mean?
Grand.
But isn't it just a way of like just like decluttering your brain? That like it's almost an old-fashioned way to think that of like as something like playing FIFA as is this sort of is cluttering rather than is relaxation. Now maybe there is a... I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, and I'm sure there's blue screen, brain activity elements to it that I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
But just from a basic point of view, I would say there is a sort of everybody needs something to switch off with.
No, I listen. That's a very appealing argument.
Yeah.
And I can say, I should read more. That's been a New Year's resolution for about 10 years plus. It's very hard to do it.
I'm finding it harder to read as I get older, I have to say. I fall asleep a lot quicker when I read.
If it wasn't for this job, I wouldn't be reading books.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Well, that's a grim statement.
I know.
But it
and
is,
holidays.
I'm starting a lot of books and realising I haven't picked it up in a week and now I don't know where I am and what's the point in going back.
There's a great book on Limerick hurling.
Oh, that's on my list. I have a... Do you know what? I was looking for it, but...
You're getting it for Christmas. It's back in the shops.
Apparently it's back in the shops. I was
It'll be back
told
in
by
the
a good
shops.
source.
A free copy.
Well, the
You have
interview's
to buy
done.
it.
The interview's done. That's the only way
dusted.
I was getting a free copy, to interview you.
Oh, like why would I give a free copy to my father? And that was about it.
And to Ger Gilroy.
I got it from his
Ego.
publisher last week, and I do feel as if I've grifted him slightly by not buying a copy.
Right, okay.
You have one?
I just feel if I read it, then I could talk about it on air.
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's a nice theory.
Will we push on?
You have to get one for the collection of books behind us.
Yeah.
We need to replace the Brian Robson one.
A
at some
communal
point.
office one, akin to a library where people can take it out
You
and
up there
read.
with Stevie Nicol and
Will I push on?
All the
There's some
grades.
good ones too. Yeah, let's push on.
Nothing
Joe.
more to be said about that texter on playing computer games.
Just get the console, Joe. Just get it.
Yeah.
Treat.
get it, and if you don't
So-
use it, you don't use it. But like,
We're loaded. You can afford a mistake. You're like Man City can afford 100 million quid on City being a waste.
My Robinho moment.
Your €700 console can just sit in the corner.
No way am I spending 7.
I can't afford it going wrong. You know that's it. My PlayStation was ultimately a waste of money, unfortunately, and that's a bad thing. You know?
For you, it was the Darwin Núñez. Of,
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Hi guys, says Sean. Again, thank you for the emails. Genuinely, this is it's now sustaining the slight tangent product for us. Really enjoy the segment. Just following on from the commentators' debate. Oh, this will be a quick response. Is it a case that more and more commentators are not in the stadiums? I know during COVID this all changed massively, but since crowds have come back, I still think a lot are based in studio. If it is the case, do commentators get to see several different monitors, or is it basically the feed that we see on TV? I know years ago it was very obvious when they were in a studio as opposed to there in person. I find it harder and harder to tell these days. Regards, Sean. They just get the feed that you're getting, Sean. Yeah. And you'll see that because so often now they're hesitant when a goal is scored because they're waiting for the offside flag to go up. So you can tell. The best way to tell if somebody's at a game or not, if you really want to tune in, it's at a goal, and particularly an offside goal, because they'll react when they see the flag on the TV screen as opposed to looking down the line and seeing the flag before you do. That's how you know.
I think it was Spain and Germany at the weekend where one of the common teams clearly weren't in the stadium and the TV director cut to the wrong shot. Yeah. And you could hear the dead silence where clearly they had no idea what was happening. You could hear the crowd cheering, but no idea what was happening, and then they kind of kicked back in afterwards. That's the giveaway.
Darren Maloney was able to talk about the protester the other evening, who was off camera. Yeah. Kenny Cunningham. Next time he's in.
Where's this going?
Next time he's in, I got to ask him. Kenny Cunningham was talking about how cool it was in the stadium for England-Iran.
It's just an immersive experience.
And he was back in the Montrose studios in time for the next game.
Now there the next morning.
Something's gone awry. Taxpayer money has been spent on getting him in and out of Doha in the space of 24 hours. Or he was literally lying about how cold it was in the stadium. You can't do that as a journalist. I hope he was picked up on that.
Is Kenny a journalist? He's an analyst.
He can't be sitting there going, never thought I'd see the day, cold in the stadium with the aircon. What about that, Des? Des, no reply back.
And here come Poland.
You're on your own here, Kenny.
I was talking to a commentator about this, kind of like post-COVID, and how there is a little bit of a change there. I think they kind of realise the setup is a lot better. So maybe they are only getting the feed, but it used to be on a small little monitor. I think they felt a little bit more removed from it, whereas now I think people are watching it in rooms with huge TVs, feeling a little bit more able to do it, a little bit more used to it, I would say, as well. And there is a sense that there's a pick and choose element to going to games now that might not have been there before COVID. Yeah. If you want to kind of take the direct question of the texter. I think it's okay. I don't think you miss out on all that much, I have to say. I think commentators are very used to it. They get into the atmosphere. They have it. What they do have is a feed directly from the ground into their ears. So they're hearing everything that they would be hearing at the ground. And
weirdly and counterintuitively, because we do both here on the Sunday, I would never say we don't. And that's more of a post-COVID thing in particular. And the bigger games, like Nathan and Brian were there for Manchester Derby and a couple of other games.
Title decided last year.
Yeah. The ironic thing is on radio, so if Nathan and Brian are at a game, they stick a microphone and hang it over the gantry and that picks up as much sound as they can. But if they do it off tube and they get the quote-unquote the feed, that has like a TV quality level of a number of microphones where you can hear the ball being kicked and you can hear players shouting. Because obviously from the gantry you're not going to pick up players shouting or the ball being kicked on the far touchline. So ironically, the immersive sound aspect is better if you're listening just on radio to the feed. Yeah.
But it is interesting that they've just had a recalibration that doesn't seem to be based on money or anything like that. But in some ways, it's even like, you know, do you want to go for the big games and still be there, but do you want to be shipped around the world, constantly going to things where you could have a kind of a slightly easier, you know, just like have a base and then go somewhere maybe for the slightly bigger games. You know what I mean? And I do feel like that what happened during COVID was people got used to a certain way and people are probably more accepting of it now, you know, and we don't have to pretend to anyone that you're doing something you're not.
I do think as well, and not to open this kind of worms here because I want to get to some of the emails, the carbon footprint of sport needs to be talked about a bit. It's off the charts. There's so much wastage and this World Cup is no exception. Apparently, according to the Sunday Business Post, Matt Cooper had a great piece, this World Cup, outside of war, is leaving the biggest carbon footprint of any event in human history.
Is that because the amount of people jetting in and out of Doha?
It's everything. It's air-conditioned World Cup stadiums. Miguel Delaney had a photo of an air-conditioned running track. Everything, the whole enterprise.
You see, it's so cynical as well because there is an official FIFA position that it's a carbon neutral World Cup. But the maths they're using is crazy. It's like, first of all, it's from the start of the World Cup as opposed to, so all the stadiums being built, every single person coming into Qatar for the World Cup isn't counted. The tickets are one way. So the flights coming in during the World Cup don't account for the fact that everybody has to leave.
Yeah.
God only knows what other sort of creative accounting has been done, but the idea that it's carbon neutral is so offensive when you have actual evidence like that piece that you're talking about that suggests it's the worst ever.
Yeah.
It's also impossible to take FIFA's numbers seriously when FIFA are giving capacities which are lower than the attendances which they're publishing for the games. Like straight away, you just go, right, this is nonsense.
The capacities are lower than the attendance?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Who did the maths on that?
Oh, they're regularly setting out
yeah.
like 81,000 is the official attendance of the game, but the capacity would be 76 or something. It's happening every day.
What it's like just being diabolical. Just like, you know what I mean?
Twirling a moustache.
It's just that kind of way. It's just like, what else can we do? I don't love it in that weird macabre kind of way. That thing, the maths. What way can we mix this up to make it look like we're carbon neutral? And just like, whatever, just flip it. Those dopes won't understand, you know. And it's just...
The one I really loved was the press release about
Diabolical's a great word.
What a great word.
the most successful World Cup of all time. So they compared the viewing figures in Ecuador of the game between Ecuador and Qatar with the people in Ecuador watching Saudi Arabia against Russia in 2018, which is just the most beautiful manipulation of stats of all time.
Yeah.
Ecuador weren't even in the World Cup.
Very Trumpian this, isn't it? Really, since his inauguration, this kind of stuff has become commonplace.
Yeah.
Isn't how that's precipitated this downgrading of standards? Let's just lie.
Yeah, just like...
Diabolical.
He's a symptom rather than a cause, though. It was heading that way anyway, I think. You know, he was just this, like, speaking of the word diabolical, he was just this incredibly, diabolical.
We're going to overuse it now. We're going to...
No, but he was, like, just, it's a good word, but he's such a shameless figure.
Yeah.
And, like, there's never been anyone like him on that. But he didn't bring it all on.
No, I'm sure. I suspect, though, he's opened the eyes of many as to how this is possible and actually allowable and successful.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Just say things enough times and it's your word against mine and everyone will both sides it in the media.
Yeah. Alan says, quick one this, hello, are 5 subs too many? In an 11-sided game, that's half the outfield players, in brackets, I did the maths, end brackets. Often we see 10 changes being made in the second half. The games become disjointed. Is it too many? I would say yes.
It feels that way. I mean, the idea was to bring this, when they increased the amount of subs during COVID, the idea was to try and, fatigue and the fact that they were racing the season back. And now games can feel really disjointed when 4 to 5 players come on at the one time.
It's like friendly.
Loads of other negatives to it.
It's
as
Fengor
well.
and Ericsson friendly.
Yeah.
So, Damien was in touch. And the subject heading was, what are we more obsessed with? And he writes, to the Tangenteers, which is
a good name.
Beautiful. Oh my God, are we the Tangenteers?
The 4 Tangenteers.
Jesus Christ.
Could we be any cooler? As a nation,
Like Joe Tanyan and the 3 Tangenteers.
Whoa.
I feel we have 2 great sporting obsessions, Damien feels. Number 1, Roy Keane. Number 2, the next Ireland rugby number 10. And he says, I'm not just talking about Sexton. Name any other Irish 10 in the past decade. I guess this goes back to Ward Campbell even.
Ward Campbell.
But he wonders, which is the bigger national neuroses? As an aside, this has become one of my favourite podcasts when I'm out walking the dog. All round excellent, irreverent chat, says Damien. So, I think this is a fair point to say that Roy Keane and the next Ireland rugby number 10, both 2 great sporting obsessions.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything more so. Split the Dubs in 2?
No, not even close.
Too short term.
Nah, it's not short term.
No,
Split
but like,
the Dubs in 2 has been going since the 70s. But yeah, no, it's
I
well
read this
behind.
email
It's well
and I thought, well, if we're a barometer, if this show's a barometer,
I mean, it comes up a lot.
it's all I talk about.
Those 2 things.
I swear to God.
No, Keane is never going away. It's funny, the amount of times I will get sick of Roy Keane and say, we can't do something every time he opens his mouth.
I know.
And then the next time he opens his mouth, I'm the first one on saying, lads, Keane said this. And I just can't help it. I'm just endlessly fascinated by him. He is...
Number 1, I think.
There's never been anyone like him. There never will be.
I think it's Keane 1. I think Keane is more of an obsession than the next Irish rugby 10. Although I probably I've spent more minutes talking about the next Irish
I
rugby 10.
seriously wonder when was the last time a week would have passed where one or both wasn't mentioned.
I know.
Like,
I don't think we've had one in the
ever?
last...
Like, When did Off the Ball start? Not that long before or after Saipan?
2002.
Yeah.
So I'd say it was talked about a bit then.
And
Keane.
what was happening in 2002 in the rugby pitch? We had Ron O'Gara and Humphreys were still kind of up against each other around that time until about 05, 06.
Yeah.
And then Sexton came in 09. So there was probably, and in between that we had 2007 World Cup where Ron O'Gara was the only out half.
Can I make,
and there was there was as much discussion then when there was none as when there was a controversy.
Can I make an observation, see if you agree with this? I think the number 10 obsession is because we're a weird nation when it comes to rugby in that participation's so low. So of the million people that will watch an Ireland-England-France game, 5% play rugby. So I think actually who plays number 10, and it was helped nicely by the Humphreys, Sexton, and now who replaces Sexton. I think that becomes the big talking point. Yes, because it's important, but also because I don't think a lot of us understand what we're watching.
Yeah.
I don't think you can tell what's going on at the breakdown in a profound way and know why one blindside flanker is better than the other. Unseen work is one of the great staples of rugby. Like, I can't have an opinion on unseen work. It was unseen.
By definition.
Indeed.
Do you mean for the non-rugby hardcore here?
Yeah. I mean, outside of that 5%. But
no, I don't think you will have to have played. I think you can be a proper student of the game.
Okay, students of the game.
But
I think that grand bandwagon that rolls up for Six Nations and World Cup, I think one of the talking points is number 10 because it's something people have an opinion on.
It's a bit like NFL as well, where the quarterback becomes the obsession of a team. The
Yeah.
out half often becomes the obsession of a team. And even when you look back at some teams that won World Cups, it was Dan Carter's New Zealand, it was Johnny Wilkinson's England. They're often defined by who plays at number 10, despite the other players that they have. And this probably speaks to how good Sexton has been as well, that we've almost taken for granted the last decade or so that Sexton has been the leader of this team and the best player of this team, and therefore we all get concerned about him taking over. It's even the Sexton obsession is even slightly different to Ward versus Campbell and Rog versus Humphreys.
Yeah.
As George Hook said many times, Joe, ever since William Webb Ellis picked up the ball and ran, the number 10 has been the most important
that's true.
position in rugby. I gave up on the impression very quickly there.
If you're going to start it, finish it.
Sorry, I couldn't. I wasn't even committed at the start.
Not really.
I could actually do a pretty good George, but I'm not. No, sorry.
What are we to say, and again, thank you for the email, Damien. What does our Roy Keane neuroses say about us?
We can't get past Saipan. Another documentary last Monday.
Yeah, well, that is
scraping.
Without a doubt true, though. There is
I think even if Saipan hadn't happened, we'd have the same obsession. I think it's bigger than that.
He's Ireland's best ever footballer, so therefore there was always going to be an obsession around Keane anyway. But I think Saipan, because of the way it divided the nation, because you're still getting questions on the promos for that documentary which are like, could Ireland have got to the World Cup final? Which I'm not sure are entirely genuine, but this idea that if Roy Keane was there, Ireland might have beaten Germany and might have got to the final against Brazil.
Kevin Kilbahan reckons it's genuine. Did you see his article on it?
I did, I read it last week.
In the Times. I was like, fair play.
I thought for a long time our obsession with Keane was a little bit small time.
Yeah.
Like that we produced so few figures of this level that we were just clinging. But the way that the UK has become slightly obsessed with them, certainly UK football,
that's a fair point.
I feel a little bit better about it now.
Because I was going to say,
it actually is that compelling.
I was going to maybe couch it in a slightly different way. I don't think it's small time. I think that it comes from the same place, though, where I do feel in Ireland that we have this, and it's dwindling a little bit, but this obsession with how the world sees us. And with someone like Keane, who is so divisive, and he's someone that I think we can see his character and the negative traits of it and kind of like talk about that, but then because he's so international, when people attack him, there's an inbuilt part of us that kind of like gets defensive of him, and he's this, we want them in the teams of the Premier League era, and we want them as like the best captains of all time, and we want, I don't know, I feel that I think it comes from a place of Irish people being obsessed with how the world sees us.
Rashford's just scored a third, by the way. Cut
for a golden boot,
from the right-hand side onto his left. Decent shot. Keeper should have saved it, and so it ends up in the net.
I told you that Hammer Wales, didn't I? Said it a couple of weeks ago.
He called it early. There was a piece in the Sunday Times, I think it was Paul Rowan, just talking about how Keane is just so box office. Even UK TV is now acknowledged Keane's pretty much the most electric presence there. And he was saying that the soundings are from the Keane camp and the ITV camp that Keane is actually open to doing I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what it was in the piece of the Sunday Times.
Oh, I'd hate that.
Well, the piece also posited the notion that it could actually elevate Keane to national treasure status over there.
Like
That
Rogan.
he would do so well over there. That he would be so charming, so funny, self-effacing.
Much
that actually
nicer
he'd do-
than you think.
We see, I think when he's not talking about the things which trigger him, i.e. exit from Manchester United, Saipan, all this stuff that just gets him into that space where he can't help himself. When he's just having a cup of tea with Micah Richards, he's just like amazingly likeable.
His Instagram was pretty wholesome. I know it was his daughter who brought the Instagram out and he's eventually closed it, but he got this idea of this wholesome granddad who likes to go for a cycle, play with his grandkids, and
chill.
just enjoys life.
Bit shy.
Pretty calm.
I think he'd be endearing in that show. He'd have a good chance of winning it.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking to Paul Lambert about it, and we joked about the idea of him going into I'm a Celebrity. Paul Lambert still keeps in close contact with Keane. They're still
Right.
pretty good mates from their time at Villa.
Right.
And Lambert reckons he'd be perfect for that. He thinks that Keane has brilliant comedic timing.
Oh, man.
I would not disagree with that because that was the roadshow that you hosted with Roy Keane, and he had the audience laughing all night.
He doesn't need it though, does he?
Money?
Like I know, well, the money, and I'm not sure. I have no
He'd
idea.
donate it, wouldn't he?
I have no idea even what the money would be for that. But yeah,
Ego, as much as he probably doesn't love that aspect. Though ironically, you know, when he talked to Gary Neville in the overlap interview with I was going to say with Triggs, God,
The other
dog's
Current dog.
20 years old, his latest dog, and he talked about going to restaurants 5-6 o'clock because he doesn't want to go to restaurants when they're busy and hates being stopped, hates being bothered. There's football famous, and then there's
oh yeah,
I'm a Celebrity famous. I mean, that would open up a whole can of worms for him. So maybe he might turn it down on that.
I'd be. He has no. There's no things to rehabilitate. He doesn't have to. He kind of doesn't have to. I don't think he has to go that route at all.
No.
I don't think he's like you see wherever with Matt Hancock or somewhere, and it's like, or even with Jill Scott won it. But I kind of understand that when you're capitalising on a moment where that team was so, you know,
She
he has
his
no.
profile.
I mean, he's. I don't think he needs it really.
Did Hancock finish third?
Yeah.
He capitalised on the moment of him, you know,
I mean, yeah,
costing thousands of
grim
lives.
old world.
How did he do so well to finish third?
Well, he's a politician, I
Must have
suppose.
been charming.
Yeah,
You know
people
what I
were
mean?
saying that they were kind of hate watching him, and
But they
they
voted
thought
for
he
him.
was good on the show, but he had to be voted for. Yeah, it was very strange.
Got to take a break. Loads more of your emails to get to. Back in just 1 second.
Off the ball on News Talk.
Now you're welcome back. A slight tangent with you this evening. We have Michael, Arthur and Will and myself. Some texts in. Lads, another Irish sporting obsession for you. Actually, here's two. One, Ireland and the dreaded World Cup quarter-final in the rugby. Two, the Mayo All-Ireland curse. Another text says, Keane makes the headlines because he's a pantomime figure rather than a serious football analyst. Well, to be fair, what serious football analyst makes headlines for being a serious football analyst, you know? Never played rugby, but it's easy to appreciate the number 10 due to points scored, key passes, and they're always interviewed. I've no idea who's doing well in a scrum. It looks like a litter of puppies with their mum fighting for a position at feeding time. Yeah, I think that's exactly that's what I was trying to say. We all easier to have an opinion like Rog or Sexton. What did you prefer? Why? Whereas, did you prefer the scrummaging of John Hayes or Tyke Furlong?
Yeah,
Crucial kicks and clutch moments in games
All
as
that
well.
stuff. Yeah.
the Conor Murray box kick would have been hitting the top 10 there for a while, wouldn't it?
Of neuroses.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a hate figure. The box kick, not Conor Murray.
in itself, yeah, a hate figure.
Loads of emails. Again, thank you so much. So we're getting on to some of the slightly longer emails. I'll race through this as quickly as I can. I thought it was an interesting point. Dear team OTB PM, really enjoying a slight tangent. I think you've struck a good balance so far when discussing the World Cup. However, I think we need to be careful that we're not subscribing to a Western media bias. Additionally, media organisations aren't actually highlighting issues in Qatar. They're simply discussing them because they've broken into mainstream consciousness. For example, the BBC coverage has not mentioned the fact that the RAF have a military base in Qatar, as do the US. Goes on to say much will be made of the authoritarian regime in Iran and the protests of the citizens in the lead up to their game with the US. And no doubt the point will be made in some quarters that Iran shouldn't be even at the World Cup. However, it won't be mentioned that in 2003, 36 million people protested globally against the US invasion of Iraq. However, the US were welcomed with open arms to the 2006 World Cup just 3 years later. It says, similarly, last week the F1 Grand Prix took place at Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi. Human Rights Watch has raised significant concerns about workers' rights in Yas Marina, similar to those in Qatar. However, I don't see this mentioned by any of the media organisations highlighting these issues in Qatar while covering the F1. He goes on to say, I understand sports reporting, sports media can't always be viewed through a political lens. However, I find the hypocrisy and the double standards of the coverage of the World Cup extremely frustrating. And then Fergal, who says keep up the good work, finishes his email by saying, has Qatar, this is the question, been a watershed moment for you guys? Will it change how you cover certain sporting events going forward? Some interesting thoughts. Take the point on the US-Iraq situation. Take the point on Abu Dhabi. I think if Abu Dhabi were to try and buy Man City now, it would be a very different conversation publicly as opposed to when it happened. It's a huge shift.
Yeah. You see, that's my entire response to that, is that the world moves on. People have talked about America, and I do, look, there is a double standard with America and there is also differences. I think that, you know, I don't know if now's the time to go into everything, but I think there is both is true. I think there's a huge Western bias double standard, and then I think there are certain differences in the way, you know, that, like, it is whatever way you want to look at, like, the war decisions and so on, they come from a place of democracy, and there are, I don't know, there a lot of stuff comes from, I suppose, a more defendable place, right? That's not to say it's all right or anything like that. And but the other thing, I do think that would their place in the World Cup in 2006 would we be as blasé about it in 2022? I don't think so. Would we have reacted to Abu Dhabi taking over Manchester City in the same way as we did Saudi Arabia taking over Newcastle? I don't think so. I think we're evolving in our thoughts on these things and in the way we kind of take on social issues, you know? So, like, Russia 4 years ago was different than Qatar 2022 because we're 4 years on in our thinking. You know, so that's kind of how I personally respond to these things, and why I think that, right, the Abu Dhabi thing you were saying about the Grand Prix, that's on a different scale altogether than where we are with the World Cup. Like, the World Cup's obviously going to take all of the limelight and it's going to suck in all of the attention. And that's where we're going to kick on with any issues that are there, and you have it. And the last thing I'll say is that I always have a very specific issue with the Qatar World Cup that's outside of the sports washing and the you know, kind of the local culture arguments that you can have, which is that this World Cup's very creation, it existing on its own without any of the other stuff, has, according to reports, cost 6,500 lives. And, you know, that's a debatable figure, but there's certainly an awful lot of lives from that. So that's just my personal response. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, there's a lot in the email. I guess to hone in on the question, the watershed moment, I think it's definitely exacerbated things. Maybe not quite watershed, but not far off it. Like, I did think when the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was generating all the flack and Lewis Hamilton was taking a stand, I did sort of think that was because this Qatari World Cup was in the ether and was being talked about, and there was a degree of, well, if we're highlighting that, then we have to highlight this, and a kind of contagion happened.
Newcastle been taken over by Saudi Arabia, I think, put a lot of focus onto the Saudi Arabia last year.
Yeah,
and
I
then,
think so.
you know, you had effectively bombings taking place just literally over the border in Yemen, very close to where the Grand Prix took place last year. So therefore, we do kind of drift in and out of geopolitics and sport when it comes to talking about these. And you can I think you can 100% take the point about the criticism that maybe we focus in on something from the here and now. And the interesting thing is, will we be talking about Qatar in 3 years' time? But like, or will Qatar just be in the rear view?
Yeah, why should we talk about Qatar in 3 years' time, I suppose?
We won't.
But like, I don't even think we should be, really. They're not, unless they're hosting another event. Like, we can't just keep going back to every country, and maybe we will. Maybe there'll be the odd retrospective piece.
But see, the retrospective side comes in when it comes to somewhere like Russia, where generally Putin has been enamoured by sporting events that have taken place. And you think about Crimea back in 2014, you think about the 2018 World Cup on the back of 2016 when they were effectively kicked out of the Olympics, and even moving into Ukraine on the back of the Winter Olympics where Russia did quite well earlier this year. We maybe look back on that lens afterwards when we think about something like the current Russian invasion of Ukraine. Like, things don't begin and end with the sporting event that takes place.
Yeah.
And I think we should really be looking back in a few years' time about what migrant worker rights look like in Qatar in 3 or 4 years' time.
Yeah, to be fair, I'd anticipate those kinds of pieces. I can see the Guardian.
But it
going
will
back.
die down. We will forget about it. It'll become the next thing.
That's natural as well, though. That's just life, isn't it?
Yeah, you move on with FIFA, I think, rather than Qatar. So Qatar are left in the rearview mirror, but then it's like, how much more does one take, for want of a better word, from FIFA? And then,
it's a tough question to answer. It's kind of vague. A watershed moment, sort of, to a point. I think it's exacerbated things further, maybe, is the best way to.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's a watershed moment. I think it's a constant evolution, and I feel like that this has been the biggest yet, but I don't know.
Clock's coming against me. There was an email wondering if the idea of the World Cup that we all grew up knowing and loving is destined for a slow death, given that we're going to 48 teams, Saudi Arabian World Cup around the corner. We'll come back to that again at some stage. That's too big a topic for the time we have left, but we did get the email from Ori and
48 teams is going to suck.
Yeah,
short answer to that. Miguel Delaney made a very good point. All of the final round group games matter at the World Cup this year with the way things have worked out.
Yeah.
When you're limiting so few teams from the group stages, it's naturally going to hurt the quality of the competition.
So how will they do it?
Last 22 knockout?
They're resisting the idea of having groups of 6 at the moment, so they want to keep it in groups of 4.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Groups of 6 would make more sense.
So it'll be 12 groups of 4, 2 from each go through? Surely not like 2 and 3 in some cases.
I think they might go with worst runners up in third place or something.
Because they want to have a last 16 next.
Yeah. So if you're playing all those games to eliminate just one team from a group.
I know we're getting back to this email, but that's not the reason that the World Cup's eroding from the way we grew up watching
I disagree with that, by the way. The World Cup is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the World Cup's going to be as popular in 20 years as it is now, no problem.
100%.
It's the World Cup. If this World Cup hasn't managed to kill the World Cup, although interestingly David Witter did say it hasn't done it for him. Let's come back to it, because we can. I think sometimes it's hard to reflect on a World Cup midway through the group stages.
Yes.
Very contingent on the games you've happened to watch, and we remember World Cups really for the knockout stages in the main. So somebody wants to write in about NFL. Love the segment. Just wondered if you guys have considered introducing more NFL content to your weekly offering. I'm your standard OTB listener, big into most sports, football, GA and golf in particular. A couple of years ago, basically bullied into joining an NFL fantasy league team. I begrudgingly joined, and I've loved playing fantasy football ever since. I knew nothing about NFL. My initial reaction was, I don't have 4 hours to watch NFL games. Long story short, it's quite a long email. He's now watching Red Zone non-stop. And he said, with the oil nations buying soccer clubs in England, 90% of people captaining Haaland in Fantasy Premier League every weekend, I've fallen completely out of love with football, and Fantasy Premier League leaves me cold. He reckons NFL is the place to be. I've pushed my soccer-obsessed mates to give NFL a chance. It's been a huge success. The most stubborn mates who never watched a minute of NFL previously are now booking their trips to the US to see games. He asks, with a degree of self-awareness, why am I sending this long-winded email about NFL? He said, I challenge the non-NFL interested OTB team members to set up a fantasy league next year. I would lay money, a minimum of 80% of you get hooked, and you'll end up thanking me. Regards, Seamus. Seamus, thanks for the email. I won't get hooked. I know I won't.
No, you can keep that.
Yeah, there's golf on Sunday night's show. I think that's the problem for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't have time. You're watching 8 hours of golf every Sunday.
There's no fat on my schedule.
Arthur's recently started watching NFL games.
That was the main reason I read out that email.
You didn't know that, did you?
Nick told me.
Oh, right. I watch them of a Sunday night when you go home. Now, I won't watch Red Zone. That's useless. It's an absolute cod.
You're in the minority there.
But it's just nothing. Like, you're not watching a game. You're just kind of watching highlights. But I watch.
Highlights.
Are you NFL convert now then?
No.
Why did you start watching it?
I just love having live sport to watch.
There's golf on a Sunday.
I mean, what kind of golf? Like, what are we talking? There's
Northern Trust Open on a Sunday night, not do it for you, no?
The allure of this, I suppose, is that there's all the big teams are playing and stuff,
No, I hear you.
But
you're watching Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night.
Well, like someone like that, you'd watch that. But I as an individual thing, it's good. I find it like you were talking about earlier with the games and stuff. It's nice and immersive to be able to sit down and watch a 4-hour game or something.
Yeah.
Because you're not completely wrapped into it. It doesn't really matter what the sport is. Like, I'd watch the same thing with tennis.
Are you getting your head around rules,
No.
tactics, strategy?
No. It's just have nice little talks when you come in the morning. Like Mick, he likes having someone to talk to about it.
Is it just to have something in common with Mick?
Just have something to chat about. Like
Is that what this is about?
Water cooler conversation is all it is.
it's good for Ronan. He really likes it. You get to talk to him with it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but, like,
Interesting.
I'm not-
You're like Harrington on the PGA Tour. He just watches American sports so he can talk to the American golfers. Where are you on this spectrum? You watch everything.
First time in 5 or 6 years that I haven't played fantasy, which has severely affected the amount of NFL that I've been watching.
Is it a good sport without fantasy?
It is, yeah. No, it still is good, but fantasy's a wonderful gateway to get in. So we were playing with a close group of mates to play fantasy.
Yeah.
So we all sit down, we do our draft early in the year, and there's always a bit of slagging in the WhatsApp group. And therefore, everyone sits down and watches Red Zone religiously on a Sunday to see what points we're picking up along the way, usually with fantasy open on the app on our phone at the same time. And it's a great way of getting into it. If you don't, say, have a team or you don't particularly have a horse in the race, it's a fantastic way to get into the sport. I think NFL it's so easy to get involved in because the season is so short.
Well, that's true. I was big into it 10 years ago.
Were you?
Oh, I didn't know that.
What made you fall off?
Golf.
Okay. Watch the 6
It
p.m.
is
game.
basically
an
just
answer
up
to all
against
of
it
life's
then, yeah.
problems.
Just can't compete for me. The year that the Patriots were undefeated and they lost in
Oh
the
yeah,
Super
07, yeah.
Was that Manning's Hail Mary?
Eli Manning, yeah, it was the David Tyree catch and his helmet.
I remember for the Eli Manning throw.
Yeah.
That year, I mean, I watched every week.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
But it's no golf. And it's one
me.
or the other.
Not to me.
Yeah, that's fair enough, yeah. I don't think there's anybody be arguing with that. For me, I definitely wouldn't be as into it as I would have been 3 or 4 years ago when I was like, it was touching on biggest sport for me, especially in the winter, you know. But I'm still watching it every Sunday. I still really enjoy it. I feel like I have been watching it long enough now and intently enough and watching enough games that I have, like, I mean, I'm not like...
Can you see the unseen work?
I can't see the unseen work, no. But I can watch it on the same level. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, you'll talk to, like, Keane Fahey who works with us and he'll tell it, like, you know, I wouldn't see the game anywhere near where he's seeing it on a completely different level. But I'd watch it in the same way as I'd watch rugby. I would understand the game fairly well. I'd understand what's happening on different levels.
One of the things I didn't like about it was I knew how little I knew.
Yeah, okay.
I found it difficult to watch it and have such little appreciation for what was going on, actually. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I think BBC's coverage is really good for that.
Yeah.
If you were to get hooked back in.
BBC Super Bowl is the only place to be.
Yeah.
They really explain it for the layman.
The fantasy thing is interesting. It's both an addition and a crutch. So you get into it. It is very different than the Premier League fantasy. Only one player is owned by anyone, so you're in a league. Generally, there are WhatsApp groups. It's good fun. And
so you can't all have Tom Brady.
No, you do a draft. So like, you know, you have one player. Yeah, that's great. And I'm in another one that's like a really long running thing where it's called the Dynasty one, where basically you have players forever.
Okay.
And then you do a draft of rookies for 2 people each year.
Good grief.
So I had Patrick Mahomes. I got him. Patrick Mahomes wasn't set down and didn't play for the first year, and I got him. I've had Patrick Mahomes on that forever, and I've won it twice. Like,
That's
you know,
a level of geek beyond the computer
but
games.
it isn't.
By the way.
It isn't actually. But anyway, the point I was going to make.
I
is,
didn't understand the emailer saying everybody has Haaland as their captain. Now I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's way more interesting. Like, the fancy is brilliant, but it also does kind of like you end up. Why would I watch Red Zone instead of a game? Because I'm bloody obsessed with like what random Detroit Lions losing by 30 points, but are they still throwing it to my guy?
Sounds to me like you're more into fantasy than the actual sport then.
No, but I'm saying is I'm not, but you that's the problem. You tend towards that. So you want to watch the sport, you're interested in it, but what's affecting me is my fantasy team.
For me, that just I hate the stench of that.
I
For me, I think that goes against what sport
I actually
is.
agree with you. I wish I could. And there are nights when I'll say I'll just check it later and I'll get in and try and watch the game. And I definitely don't pay as much attention to my fantasy team as I used to. I'll still change it during the week or whatever, but I don't during the games. I don't, because it actually takes over. It takes over.
Consumerism and capitalism and all the nerdy aspects have gone too far.
But once we get to the playoffs now and stuff, like, there's no fantasy anymore, and and there's no red zone, and you're actually watching games for what they are. Yeah. It's an incredible sport if you've been following it, and if you actually, they know how to put on a TV show as well.
They sure
you
do.
know?
Were you coming in there on something?
That fantasy thing creeping into football.
Without
more
doubt
this
it
year,
is,
but you see it, they keep referring to it.
Soccer, football.
Yeah.
What's that driven by? Are the Premier League trying to make cash out of that? Are they
their
getting
thing,
the
isn't it?
broadcasters?
It's fantasy
to do that?
Premier League.
They
I
own
presume.
it.
Yeah, they
It
own
goes
it.
through
So
PremierLeague.com, like, yeah.
But
Do most people not just make a team and by October have rarely logged in again?
Depends how well you're doing, Joe. If you're doing well, you'll keep going. If you do badly, you go.
But most people do that. They forget to make too many changes and they're gone. But the rest of the people are obsessed with it. God, who got the assist is just...
well, to the point that even like Match of the Day now show up the assist as well as the goal scorer. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
On Match of the Day, it'll be the scorer, but they also the assist. For me, again, I think anyone who's watching the sport that way, as someone who loves football, played football, I sort of think, yeah, you're just...
The minute I saw Soccer
players
Saturday
are obsessed with it as well, though.
Huh?
When Soccer Saturday started to introduce it into their coverage, that's when I found it strange.
I just think...
So a few minutes before kickoff, they will
Jeff
now bring
talks
on an
about his
expert.
fantasy team all
Yeah,
the
Jeff will
time.
be like, here's who we picked for this week.
think
Have
it's
you transferred someone out?
It's for people who don't like football, who don't actually like it at its core, who are bored by...
But on the
1-0
NFL
draw.
thing...
That's a good game.
On the NFL thing, fantasy is so big, right, that there's kind of like the main fantasy guy who has like a podcast and a show, whatever, who's with ESPN, Matthew Berry is his name, right? He was headhunted, signed like one of the biggest sporting transfers of the year by NBC, right? Who have the prime time, like the night time, the game that's on at 1 o'clock in the morning here, but that's the big game of the week in America. He's on their panel. He's on Sunday night on the panel talking about fantasy as part of their coverage for the prime time, the game of the week.
This is where I know that I'm already an old man.
You don't
raging.
find that over in the golf.
Fantasy golf is pretty big.
Can't be, can it? What?
You
What do
playing,
mean?
John?
No.
What's fantasy golf?
I don't know, I've never played it. I was in much the same boat as you, actually. I didn't understand it and just decided not to enter a...
You buy an array of different tiered players
Okay.
and you see how they go across the Northern Trust Open.
Good grief. What is that even
for the entire
simulating, though?
season.
Uh-huh.
What's
For
that
the
even
entire
simulating?
season.
You're basically what? You're like a Nike executive essentially working with
Just
your
picking,
guys.
your guys.
Kevin
You're-
Kistner.
You're trying to balance out,
who gets on.
Kevin Kisner.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Kistner gets you a top 10. He's a level 2 player.
He's a money spinner.
We went too harsh on Kevin Kisner.
We?
Take it away.
I didn't know he was. I still don't know who he is.
That was the point.
You're the only person who mentioned his name.
That was the point. God, someone on the main game. What a waste of
Yeah.
space.
Oh, wow, that's unfair. He's very good at what he does. And he's a multi-millionaire now. He started from nothing. He basically invented the whole media coverage.
Am I alone in thinking I'm so out of kilter with where the world's going there? Sport.
Yeah, I don't enjoy that. No, that aspect of it.
Maybe I should just embrace it. Stop taking it so seriously. Like, why do I have to be so sober about all this? It's sport. It should be fun.
If
Why
it
am I a killjoy?
happened in like football, like the Premier League football, I'd be grimmed out by it. In America, it adds to the coverage because the studio shows are dire.
Are we not
They're
five?
so bad.
are they?
Oh, they're awful. They're awful.
Because the basketball is
Quick hit
amazing,
nonsense.
isn't it?
It's specifically good on the TNT with Charles Barkley.
That one?
Everything else is crap.
Is it?
On all channels, yeah. All sports, all channels. Just, it's too quick. They only have they come back and they'll say, oh, amazing stuff by like LeBron. LeBron's playing really well tonight, isn't he, Charles? Yeah, he's doing great. I think he's the man to watch. But don't forget about Anthony Davis. Right, we'll be back after these, and they go to another break, and it's just like this constant, like really fast-paced nonsense in between ad breaks. It's just
where they go, we follow.
yeah.
I think so. I mean, that's the way it's going to go.
That's half time is a waste of time on coverage now, unless it's on Virgin Media Rugby.
It's amazing what you pack into those 2-3 minutes.
Diabolical.
What, the rugby coverage?
You're what you're doing to me there. Right. I think we're out of time. Are we 3 minutes over?
As usual.
At least.
Okay.
Poor
Apologies.
Dion.
There were several emails which wanted to discuss the armband controversy. Apologies, we didn't get to them, and there were a couple of others about Amazon and a few different other bits and pieces which we may get to, we may not, but we are so far out of time. So that was a slight tangent for this week. We may or may not be back next week. Arthur, thank you. Michael, thank you. Will, thank you. A slight tangent at offtheball.com is where you'll get us.
Off the ball on News Talk.